to the Slovak language. And these were, everyone I want to make this point. All the people that helped her in her times of trial were people of very deep faith. They were Christians. One was a Catholic, one was a Protestant, but they were moved to what they did by their faith. It's a fact. And this doctor, when she first came to see her, so she started screaming at her, and she said, how could you do this in times like these? And I was talking about giving up birth, and you're not a person, you're a bear. Anything happens to the child is your fault. What kind of a mother are you? Where's your maternal instinct? And this, and that, and the other. And but at the end, after the whole harangue, she said, but it's my Christian duty to help you. And my mother broke down and cried because she's getting enough trouble from here and from here and from here. And now the doctor's on your case also. And Dr. Roshka was like this. He said, no, you don't have to cry. Listen, your people have been through many tough spots in the history, and they've always survived. You will survive too. You'll see. Look at it. And she said, I'm going to try to get you some kind of a situation. At first, she sent her to this town, Skalica, which was on the other side of Slovakia. And she said, I have an acquaintance there, a social worker, and I'm going to say to your member of the social work department, you have to visit this older lady there who needs help, and so there'll be some kind of excuse for her to run away with her. She comes to this town. Turns out it's a one-horse town, which means it's a one-sheriff town, which means the sheriff knows everybody in the town, and who are you? And, she has her papers, and he said, I'll hold on to these papers and check them. Meanwhile, you go about do your business. And here she has a baby, and it's, I'm talking November, December. Think of what that means. I mean, which one of us would take a baby out all the time in November, December? And all she has is a baby carriage and a suitcase. And, where are you going to find a place to stay? You can't stay here, can't stay here. Finally, find an old peasant family who, again, thank God, we're totally out of it. They barely knew the war zone, And she took her in. She said, and she was a real peasant type and I mean that in a good way. And so she said, I'll give you a place to stay. You have a little child. Where's the father? And my mother said, well, I can't say where the father is. I said, I understand he's with the British Army. I won't tell anybody, And take him in, and it was getting near the holidays. So, in honor of my mother, she shechted a pig, that's a nice meal, So Mother has to say, I'm a vegetarian, She said, well, what do you like? She said, do you like noodles? I like noodles. So she brings an hour later, brings a huge thing, and who's this for? This is for you. In the countryside, that's how they eat. This is for you, and she let me help you take care of the baby, and they wash all the the baby stuff, and they put it out on the line, and it's the middle of December, so everything is frozen stiff. And meanwhile, the sheriff calls her back to over there, and he said, listen, I just got a telegram from Bratislava to arrest you. But I'm not such a bad person as I look at. I'll give you 2 hours. But I want you out of here in 2 hours. It's a little town. He said, because in 2 hours I have to come to you. I have to come and get you. You have to get mad. You have to run back to the house. Tell the lady I decided to go back to see my husband. I thought your husband was in the British Army. I'll tell you about that later. Let's get the clothes off the line. Meanwhile, they're all frozen, so you have to bring an iron. An iron in those days, not like today, you plug in the wall. You have to get the coal and put it into the iron. You have to take it out, all this sort of thing. And then my mother has to say, once again, she can't carry all this by herself. Do you have a girl that can come with me? Also, another peasant goes, no, there's only one girl in town, and she's at a funeral. So I'm like, can you get her? Well, I'll get her later. Can you get her right now? And somehow they did it, and she's running away, and the wheel breaks off of the baby carriage, and she says, what are you trying to do to me, And somehow or other, once again, with that girl there holding the baby, they get on the train, they go back to Bratislava. It's just before Christmas, and the Catholic friend says, what happened? You came back. He says, it's a long story, but I got to move in. The mother says, you're going to be the death of us. What are you going to do? And they say, when Yontif, you talk like this. Think about our Lord. Wasn't he at different times on the run and so forth? The mother said, you're right. So, but we can't do it because the Germans are going from house to house. And so they went back to this. So they went to this pediatrician and says, you got to do something. There's a mother and a child. And she says, give me a few days. Like 2 days. And 2 days later, she was able to tell her that I found you a place on the other side of the country in a place called Staratura, which was a resort where they had a big institution of an